Oklahoma City's Greenbrier lagoons are definitely on the way out, to be replaced by the proposed Cow Creek wastewater treatment plant. City leaders gave the final stamp of approval today to having a private company build and operate a new treatment plant. This agreement with the Spitz Development Company calls for tax breaks for Spitz, which the company will share with the city. It's a concept Oklahoma City was forced to try.
We believe that it's an appropriate new technique for building public facilities. It's definitely innovative, no question about that. We're the first city of our size that's attempted something like this. We're doing it not because we're so innovative and we're so wonderful and pioneering, but because we have to absolutely build this sewage treatment plant, and we have to have it under construction by December of this year, or the regulators are going to be on our backs.
Johnson says there were other ways to have financed a new treatment plant after the sales tax increase was defeated, but the alternatives were either too unpopular or too ridiculous. Ed Stewart, News 4.
To survive, and I sleep in a fever, so this is my life. Take me up, oh, you take me up to a higher ground, you take me up so high, now I never wanna come back down.
Okay, John, once you start, you don't stop, okay? Remember that the music goes on. Justin?
If passed, the bond money would have been spent to alleviate crowding in this band room. The $1,175,000 would have provided a new building to house band, art, and music classes. That would have allowed this room to be divided up into 6 other classes. Piedmont School Superintendent David Owens says this year's reassessment of Canadian County taxes kept the bond issue from passing.
After the property reevaluation was done, most people's taxes have increased, and due to the fact that the economy in Oklahoma has been as low as it has the past year or two, I believe were the reasons.
Dr. Owens says this has been the first time in the school's history they were able to vote for more than $1 million. He says he expects the school to grow at least 6% within the next year, and the extra room will be greatly needed. The superintendent says it will be 4 months before another election can be held on this bond money, but he says he is confident of passage the next time around. This is the area set aside for the additional building, but since school patrons failed to pass the bond issue, it'll remain empty a little longer. Dr. Owens says he'll spend the time between now and the next bond election educating people on the educational needs of his students. Tara Haskins, News 4 in Piedmont.
Some people may think we're being overly cautious. I'm glad to say that we have the right here to be overly cautious. We want to be overly cautious. We want to make doggone sure that everything is kept on site as much as possible.
I thought Vice President Bush was excellent. I thought his points were well made and well delivered. I thought, on the other hand, that Mrs. Ferraro exhibited that doom and gloom attitude that we've had so much of from the Mondale campaign. I just don't believe the American people are really ready to elect someone to the White House that thinks the United States is in a mess, and when in fact it's not.
Since the last debate on Sunday evening, on Monday we've been receiving extremely positive results. And this is we haven't done any scientific polls, but we're getting it over the telephone. Another indicator of this is that we're getting the old faithful Democrats out there calling in, wanting supplies, wanting activity. What can we do next? There were watch parties not only on Sunday night across the state, but there were watch parties last night. The phone calls have continued today. And we feel that that means a very positive response to this last week of activity in the Democratic Party.
Go. 1, 2, 3. Let's go!
And with that, they're off. The Okie spokesman against the rival Tulsa Renegades. This is serious business. Practice is twice a week. This is the first conference game of the season, and they play by NCAA rules with just a few minor changes. The chair is considered part of the body. If you touch it during a play, you have a foul. The wheels are considered legs when it comes to crossing boundaries. The extended feet don't count. 2 turns of the wheel and you have to dribble. Some prefer to dribble non-stop as they roll across the court. For these guys, it's competition, it's exercise, and it's fun.
If you're used to using a chair, it's just almost like playing without a chair. I mean, you get so used to it, and you get so used to the way the other people are moving, you can go in and out of people quite rapidly. This is a new team from Tulsa. This is their second year, and we know most of the guys. We're strong rivalry, interstate rivalry, but it's more so with the other Tulsa team because they've been around as long as we have, and we're pretty bitter enemies in fun, though.
Come on, spokesman!
This is the 10th season for the Oklahoma City team, held together by good times and friendship. They're looking for new players. If you'd like to get involved, contact Richard Harnell at 321-5133. There's a spirit of sportsmanship alive in this gym, and they'd like to share it. Terry Cook, News 4.
Every day, more than 600 parking tickets are issued in Oklahoma City. Sometimes the person cited forgets to pay the fine, and other times the tickets are simply disregarded. Today, there are 115,000 outstanding parking tickets, and that amounts to about $1 million. In an effort to recoup part of the money lost from overdue parking tickets, an amnesty program has been proposed. For 3 weeks, parking violators would be allowed to pay just $5 for each ticket. The savings could be tremendous.
Some of the tickets go as high as $50. So if someone has a ticket that's gone to warrant for handicapped parking, for instance, they will be able to pay off a $50 warrant for $5. So there's a lot of potential savings there to the citizens.
When or if the City Council approves the amnesty program, it would start October 29th. Court administrators expect at least $90,000 in overdue parking fines will be collected at the counter, and they stress this would only be a one-time offer. Ed Stewart, News 4.
Okay. All right. Yes, sir.
I want to get right there, okay?
We had the agreement that at the beginning that if the winds were over 20, we wouldn't do any loading of the waste material, but since it is so high, we're not doing any compacting or any operations at all. They're going to keep a man on the site to keep everything weighted down so that there won't be a dust problem this evening.
Just last week, the union here in Oklahoma City ratified the company's contract proposal. The contract was not universally accepted by the UAW, but it passed. Now comes word the plant may be shut down anyway. Over 30,000 Canadian UAW workers went on strike, protesting the company's contract proposal. The problem, the Canadian plant supplies Oklahoma City's operation.
The Canada strike certainly impacts this plant because they provide considerable interior trim for us, they provide transmissions for us, and some metal parts. And we have about a week's inventory right now, and beyond that it's just touch and go day by day. And probably if they were to stay out and strike for any duration, we'd be shut down.
After last week's contract ratification here in Oklahoma City, it appeared things might finally be settled at this plant. Now everything has changed. The plant has enough supplies to continue operations for a few more days. It didn't take long for the fire to spread through one whole section of the Pines apartment complex. Over 20 units were totally involved before firemen were able to get the blaze under control. They poured water on the fire for hours, but were only able to contain it. The 3-alarm blaze was winning the battle, and there was not much to be done. And as the night breeze began to slowly filter the smoke over the city, firemen knew they were in for a long, hard fight. The demand put on the water system in the area began to cause problems as well. Low water pressure became a factor to be dealt with swiftly, and firemen began checking water maid charts to find the solution. The fire took most of the residents by surprise. They grabbed what belongings they could and ran for safety. The Salvation Army will furnish food and shelter, but for most, the fire didn't leave much to go back to.
Is your apartment on fire right now?
It is now. Mine was the next one to hit when I got out. So.
You lose everything?
I imagine so. I haven't been back. I can't get back in.
3 were on this end, on this side.
Accurately assessing the damage is impossible at this point. Firemen at the scene did say they knew of no injuries or deaths, but the task of searching the rubble for victims remains. In the meantime, firefighters will stay on the scene until the smoke clears. Kevin Okla, News 4.
This is what the whole debate is about. Should a group called Oklahoma Club Incorporated open a racetrack in South Oklahoma? Many point to the success here at Blue Ribbon Downs as proof that a racetrack could only help the area around Love County. And few disagreed with that economic prediction at the Racing Commission's meeting. It's questions about the track's future owners that have prevented a permit. And in a session that lasted all day, commissioners heard misgivings about how those owners would build the track and how they would pay for that construction.
I'm concerned about financing, I'm concerned about unrealistic projections, I'm concerned about real estate, I'm concerned at what would be an inconsistent application of your regulations if you do allow it here without the same kind of requirements you did at Blue Ribbon Downs.
But many who gave testimony disagreed with those charges. They claim no one can ensure the success of a track, though supporters also add that Oklahoma horse racing has been successful so far.
Salisaw is a good example. There's been great growth there, motels, restaurants, many people from our part of the state have invested in that growth. I suggest to you that if the track is located in this area, you're going to see the same thing.
Regardless of whether commissioners give the permit and allow the new racetrack, both sides agree that this decision will affect the economy in South Oklahoma for years to come. Bob Donaldson, News 4.
Can you imagine the impact of 11,000 Indian people entering the system in Oklahoma City at OMH, at the 4 community clinics? And we have tried to cooperate with them, and they cooperate with us too. This veto jeopardizes everything. The urban programs are clearly going to have to fight for their lives.
Two female employees of the nursing home were making some rounds and inspections of the rooms, came into a room of a 64-year-old Alzheimer's patient who was a resident there at the nursing home, apparently interrupted, surprised a rape in progress.
It's been half a decade since 4 people were shot in this OKC home. The Reverend Richard Douglas and his wife Marilyn died from their wounds. Their 2 children survived to identify their parents' murderer. A Canadian county jury convicted Glenn Burton Ake of the killings. The jurors gave Ake 2 death sentences and 1,000 years in prison for his crimes. A pair of psychiatrists and a physician testified during the trial that Ake exhibited symptoms of paranoid schizophrenia when they examined him 5 months after the murders. However, the 3 defense doctors did not determine if the defendant was insane at the time of the slayings. The trial judge refused a defense request to appoint a psychiatrist to determine Ake's mental competency the day of the murders. A civil rights attorney will argue before the U.S. Supreme Court that the state should have furnished a court-appointed psychiatrist to determine Ake's competency. Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Turpin will argue that Ake's death date was deserved and that it's the defense's burden to prove a defendant was legally insane when he committed a crime. While the lawyers argue the issue in Washington, convicted killer Glenn Burton Ake will remain on Oklahoma's death row, waiting for news about whether he will live or die. Scott Wallace, News 4.
General Motors recently paid $6 million to the Middle School District, ad valorem payments from 1980 on. The 1979 tax dispute is still tied up in court, but not in the state Supreme Court. Yesterday's ruling leaves the district court in charge of deciding that issue. GM is pleased with the ruling. Contacted today by News 4, GM's Walt Mayer said, quote, "It's a good ruling. It's aggravating it's still got a long way to go, but it's still a good ruling," end quote. Middle School Superintendent Babe Eubanks takes a wait-and-see attitude about the decision.
Well, that's fine. We're willing to respect any decision given by a court. We wish that the Supreme Court had taken some action, but I can understand why they'd not, because they'd ruled on that previously.
List B was the correct one, and nobody picked List B.
If the district court eventually rules against GM, it would mean almost $250,000 more for the Middle School District. Dan Slocum, News 4.
Ollie Ruth Williams versus MADD.
MAD members were called to court by a woman charged with second-degree murder. Defense attorney Bob Walker asked that MAD members not be allowed to wear their yellow identification buttons during Ollie Ruth Williams' murder preliminary hearing next week.
You know, we consider these as a form of a demonstration when they come in and wear their badges in the courtroom. I mean, it's no different than if they carry a sign.
Walker's client is accused of being drunk and running over an Oklahoma City man while he edged his front lawn. In the past, MAD personnel routinely wore their buttons during hearings by judges, but removed them during jury trials. Chief District Judge Joe Cannon expanded that policy by outlawing MAD badges in all county courtrooms.
You can't come into the courtroom with badges on or any other demonstrable thing that shows that you're on one side or the other. That is, in my opinion, not legal. You're restrained only from doing that.
The danger is simply that it does influence people that it shouldn't be influenced. What should influence a jury or a judge is the evidence that comes from the stand.
We feel that the victim has a right to some support. The defendant certainly has a lot of rights that the victim doesn't have, and we just feel that we should be allowed to do this.
The MAD members say they will seek legal counsel before making their next move, and they may need it, because the defense lawyer who asked for the badge ban says his next step is to ask that all MAD buttons be outlawed from this courthouse. Scott Wallace, News 4 at the Oklahoma County Courthouse.
The line resembled the kind you'd see for Michael Jackson tickets, a surprising show of patriotism, a last chance for these Oklahomans to take part in the American political process. The average wait in this line, well over an hour.
Democrat or Republican? Democrat.
There's something driving these people to vote, perhaps a sense of responsibility.
It's plain and simple. I need to stand up for my rights and put the man in there that's going to help me stand up for them.
When you think about an hour and a half, it's not very long as compared to the 4 years whoever gets to be president.
If you don't vote, you don't have any say in the government.
You want your say?
Yes.
And both Republicans and Democrats had a say in this line.
I appreciate the fact that he's cut down on crime quite a bit.
So you're talking about Reagan?
Yeah.
Well, as an American and as a diehard Democrat, it is my duty to come out and vote and to exercise my right as a voter.
Record numbers have registered this year, many first-time voters.
What brought you out for your first time?
Well, it was the last day, and I figured I'd better do it now. I won't get a chance for another 4 years to choose somebody for the president.
Many who stood in this line tonight said it was refreshing. Not the wait, but the fact that people care and people want to be heard. Dan Slocum, News 4.
They have to learn, and most of them have, that they plan their trip in advance and they know what states they're traveling through, what the laws are for those states, and they keep their weight limit within what they can legally travel through all the states. And if they do this, they don't have to avoid the fixed scale locations. We're going to compile everything, all of the activity that each trooper encounters in his assignment, and at the end of it, we'll compare that with what the other states, Louisiana, Arkansas, and Texas, have found, and see if we have any common problems that we need to address.
We didn't even know it was available, and if we had known that it was available, our research has been in the area of xenotransplantation, that is, transplantation between animals of different species.
October 16th.
Jane Adkisson and her daughter Jennifer stopped into the Burger King at Southwest 74th and May Avenue for a Coke 2 weeks ago. Last night they found out that by doing so, they'd been exposed accidentally to hepatitis. Today she and Jennifer were among about 100 people who showed up for hepatitis shots. Health officials say the number of exposed is probably in the hundreds and maybe even in the thousands.
Here we go. It scared me, not for myself, but for Jennifer, you know. So we thought we better come on down, and, you know, we called the health department first. And so we really weren't sure if we should, you know, come on down or not, just, you know, having a Coke. But she said, yeah, come on down, so we did.
Hepatitis A is transmitted through feces. It's a milder virus than the more damaging hepatitis B, and that liver damage is not as severe. Dr. Delaportis tells us oftentimes victims are never aware that they even have the disease, characterized by anemia, nausea, perhaps loss of appetite, and yellow discoloration of the skin.
It probably may cause some damage that usually is transitional. Within 3 or 4 months, the liver will be back into normal function. There is no evidence that leaves a permanent damage to the liver.
If you ate at the Burger King on Southwest 74th and May Avenue between October 16th and October 21st, you may have been exposed. You must have a shot within 2 weeks of that exposure, which means no later than November 4th, in order to combat that virus. Terry Cook, News 4.
Jeff's, how long did there was a cancer? Well, middle of January. All right. Thank you very much.
There's quite a few. Most of them went home.
Yeah, well, he was sick today with the flu and he couldn't make it.
To me, it means that we can do just as much as anyone else could do. So I think that's really great that he could do that, especially with one leg.
The basic message is that that he's not physically handicapped, he's a physically challenged
person. And he wants that to be a very strong point there, that you're challenged and you're not handicapped. He doesn't like the word handicapped.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, they call me. Yeah, okay. I don't know how to eat it.